What's up, everyone? Welcome to the June 6th edition of FanDuel Tournament Plays presented by PrizePicks. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And as a reminder, use the code Awesemo when you sign up and make a deposit at PrizePicks. You'll receive one free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. You'll also receive a 100% deposit bonus up to $100 on that first deposit. We have a 6-game MLB slate tonight, and as usual, we're going to take a look at 3 of the top tournament stacks and 3 of the top tournament pitchers using the top stacks and top pitchers tools on the Awesemo.com website. Starting with the top 3 tournament stacks. Number 3, the Houston Astros are taking on Robbie Ray tonight in a boom or bust spot for both sides. The Astros have been a very good offense, not surprisingly, so far this season with a 113 WRC plus and a 174 ISO on their active roster. Ray has been a very good pitcher. That's not surprising either. He's struck out 27.1% of hitters. He has a 3.66 xFIP, but he has also allowed 1.51 home runs per 9 innings. So this is a spot where you shouldn't be surprised if the Astros fail against a good pitcher, but you also shouldn't be surprised if they hit a lot of home runs, and they are only projected for 6% aggregate ownership with a 7% chance of being the top scoring stack and a 5% chance of being the top value stack. Number 2, the Boston Red Sox taking on Noah Syndergaard. The Red Sox have a 4.7 implied run total. They're projected for 5% ownership with a 9% chance of being the top scoring stack. They have about a 3% chance of being the top value stack. Syndergaard hasn't been nearly as effective this year as he was pre-injury. He's only struck out 15.9% of hitters. He has a 4.14 xFIP. And the other thing you always have to keep in mind when Syndergaard is pitching is that you can pile up a lot of fantasy points based off stolen bases if your guys get on base. So you don't even necessarily need a bunch of home runs against Syndergaard, who has still done a pretty good job of limiting damage so far this year. He's allowed 13 stolen bases in only 40 and a third innings pitched. He's always been horrible at holding runners. And this isn't a case of if a team has speed, they'll take advantage of him. They will steal everybody. Teams that don't run will run on Syndergaard. Players that don't steal bases will steal on Syndergaard. So there's a lot of upside here, even if they aren't able to hit a bunch of home runs off of him. And Boston has been much better offensively recently as well. They started this year off very slowly, but overall now their active roster has a 114 WRC plus and a 167 ISO. And number 1, the Texas Rangers taking on Cal Quantrill. He has not been good at all this year. 15.1% strikeout percentage, 4.9 xFIP. The Rangers are projected for 8% ownership with a 9% chance of being the top scoring offense and a 14% chance of being the top value offense. They've been league average so far offensively this year with a 100 WRC plus and a 159 ISO on their active roster. Now, looking at the top 3 tournament pitchers, number 3, Cal Quantrill at 7,700 against those Rangers. I mentioned before, he hasn't been good this year. I don't really see an argument that Quantrill is not the worst pitcher on tonight's slate, but it is only a 6-game slate. He's only getting 5% ownership. He has an 8% chance of being the top scoring pitcher, an 8% chance of being the top value pitcher. And the Rangers do have a 23% strikeout percentage on their active roster, only a 100 WRC plus. So you certainly shouldn't have much confidence in Quantrill. He's not any good, but 6-game slate, use variance to your advantage. The Rangers are projected for some ownership, as I mentioned before, so you get some negative leverage there as well. Number 2, Jon Gray, $8,100 in a tough matchup with the Cleveland Guardians. The Guardians have been better offensively than I expected this year, I think, than most people expected. Their active roster still has a 111 WRC plus, and in addition to that, they only have a 15.6% strikeout percentage. So this is a team that produces offensively and is also really difficult to strike out. Certainly a bad mix for fantasy pitchers, but Gray only projected for 3% ownership at $8,100. He has an 8% chance of being the top scoring pitcher, a 7% chance of being the top value pitcher, and he has been good overall this year. He has a 26% strikeout percentage, 3.52 xFIP. So the only real reason that the ownership isn't there is the difficult matchup against the Guardians, but that's accounted for in the fact that he's projected for barely any ownership on tonight's slate, despite there only being 12 starting pitchers to choose from. And number 1, Carlos Carrasco, $8,500 price tag, taking on the San Diego Padres. Carrasco has struck out 21.4% of hitters this year. He has a 3.57 xFIP. The Padres active roster has a 101 WRC plus, a 21.8% strikeout percentage, and Carrasco is projected for about 9% ownership with a 10% chance of being the top scoring pitcher and a 7% chance of being the top value pitcher. So to recap, the top 3 tournament stacks on FanDuel: number 3, the Houston Astros; number 2, the Boston Red Sox; number 1, the Texas Rangers; and the top 3 tournament pitchers: number 3, Cal Quantrill; number 2, Jon Gray; and number 1, Carlos Carrasco.